And welcome back to Your Voice, Your Future on this Monday, February 9th, following last night's Super Bowl. This is sort of a continuation from our weekend show where we had Lou and Brad on to talk about their predictions of the Super Bowl. You know, if I were not a broadcaster and a media owner, I would be a sports commentator because I told those guys, look at them.
Here we go.
I told them Seattle was going to beat them down. They're not even in the same league. Seattle, the New England had an easy pathway to the Super Bowl, okay? They were not even telling it showed. And I said 2 touchdowns. That's what I said. And guess what? It was 2 touchdowns. But let me welcome back Lou Holder and Brad Fritzhand. You know, my man Lou is an Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist, media instructor, and Brad is researcher at Sinclair Broadcast Group, and I welcome them both back. So, guys, come on, give up the love. Come on now.
We were all right, I think. We all did predict the Seahawks.
We're not talking about you right now. We're talking about me, my prediction, okay? We'll get to you, okay? Because you were wishy-washy. Because you said at the end, you thought that there's something going to happen and New England can pull it out. You said it's going to be, because I heard all that rhetoric you spewed. Lou, you heard it. But Lou, listen, I mean, I want to tell you, it was embarrassing. Lou?
I mean, you were on it, Armstrong. I mean, you talked about the defenses. That was a clinic.
Oh, clinic.
And for the second straight year, Armstrong, defense decided the Super Bowl. You know, last year, that Philadelphia Eagles defense got to Patrick Mahomes multiple times just by the 4 linemen that they had. Seattle did the same thing. New England was never really into the game. It was like the dam was just getting ready to break. I was impressed with Seattle. And the whole time, Brad, I was like, you know what? Armstrong is going to be in it. Like, I told you. I told you.
him. But let me tell you something.
I told you.
I want to tell you this, Brad. If the Los Angeles Rams or the San Francisco 49ers or the Philadelphia Eagles had played New England in the Super Bowl, they would have won. Brad, they would have won.
I mean, listen, the game itself was, like you said, it was really over by halftime. You had, I think it was the worst performance by an offensive line in the Super Bowl. May had just no time, under pressure the whole entire game, getting sacked. I mean, it was over by halftime, like you said. It really wasn't much of a fight.
You know, why does the Super Bowl remain the single most powerful media event in America? Lou?
I mean, I mentioned that the last time because of everything else, all the ancillary stuff. I mean, people were the Bad Bunny show. People want to know what was going on. The Lift Every Voice and Sing with Coco. All the betting, the gambling that we were talking about. I mean, we didn't even really get into the last time when we talked about the betting and the gambling, the fantasy football leagues that have spurned, you know, there was so many reasons why last night was, even if you didn't even know and like the teams, because it was. When it came to the football part of it, Armstrong, a lot of people like, but there was this intrigue. There was always this other stuff going on. The commercials. I thought the one with Mike Tyson talking about processed food. And I mean, I was listening.
MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. Yes, that was the MAHA ad. Yes.
I was actively listening to these commercials, which makes it the most popular television sporting event that we have in our country every single year, because it's not about the game.
You know what? I'm going to drive your point home, Brad. Let me tell you how I'm going to drive this point home. You know, I said this is the first time in 20 years I have not attended a Super Bowl, but I hosted a Super Bowl party last night, and my senior producer, Adine, who's in the control room, came over with her best friend, Ramon. And you know, the only thing they were interested in last night, they never watched the game. They talked the whole night. The only thing they were waiting for to see Bugs Bunny perform at halftime. That's what they're waiting on. Bugs Bunny at halftime.
Close enough.
Brad, where was your invitation?
Wait a minute, hold up. But anyhow, you know what they were waiting on? Let me tell you what they were waiting on with the halftime show. To see whether or not Cardi B was going to perform. I said, Cardi B? And then when they thought they did not see Cardi B, they started spreading the cell phone, going back, recording. I mean, it was crazy. The only thing they wanted to see was the halftime show, Brad. They didn't really watch the game.
Yeah, and the halftime show made a lot of headlines. I mean, you had, to be expected, the president immediately put out a tweet after the halftime show
Now, he
ended.
told the truth in that tweet.
Of...
I don't mean no harm. He told the truth in that tweet. It's the worst halftime Super Bowl performance I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen them in person. I didn't know what to go. Listen, I'll be fair on this. I don't understand what these people are saying anyhow when they're performing. I have no idea what they're saying. Doesn't matter what language it's in, okay? So the fact that he wasn't speaking English last night wouldn't have mattered to me, because I never understand. All I do is get caught up in the soul, but there was no soul last night. I don't know what that was. Seriously, it wasn't, I just don't know what it was. I never understood it. I didn't get in a rhythm. But I did with the football game. That's the only thing I cared about, guys, was that. Well, what about Seattle's defense making May look like a boy? I don't mean no harm. They made him look like a kid out there, okay? He was sacked so many times, I felt sorry for him. Man, they got in his head. He was so scared. He was petrified. He couldn't play his game.
Yeah, no, he absolutely could not play his game. I mean, I think that was the main thing that came out of this game was it was such a bad performance from the offensive line. And when you're a quarterback, if you have no time, especially a young quarterback in any game, it's going to be a problem. But the Super Bowl, I mean, that is the game, and to not have time to throw the ball and make decisions, it's going to really get in your head. And you saw that yesterday. I mean, it was a disaster.
Now, Lou, let me tell you something else I heard from one of the most prominent attorneys in Washington, D.C. I can't call her name. I have mad respect because, they were in the pool, and someone in the pool made it to the Super Bowl. And so before the game on Saturday, we were talking, and they were asking me, who should they place a bet on? I said, you got to place it on Seattle. New England doesn't have a chance. But anyhow, her son convinced her to do otherwise, and they betted on New England. But here's what she had to say. She said, well, I actually think the whole thing was rigged because they knew the Seattle owners were selling the team, and that team is going to probably be worth $8 billion. So the game was, I said, do you actually believe that these athletes who put their life on the line every day for these many weeks get injured, get embarrassed, everything is questioned, this is what they fight for? You actually think they're going to go out in the Super Bowl and they're going to get caught up in this drama about somehow or another they want them to lose because they're selling the team? I mean, what kind of crazy? But people have all kind of conspiracy theories when they're losing. Lou.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to that at all. I don't think that stuff is rigged or things of that nature. Not the Super Bowl for me. That's out there. That is out there. I mean, we saw, you had mentioned it, Armstrong, when we were talking about the NFC and the AFC championship games, and you could just tell that, Seattle was dominant getting to where they were, and then New England was just getting by. I mean, a lot of people would say, hey, look, if Bo Nix's ankle wasn't hurt, that the Denver would have given, would have been the AFC's representative in the Super Bowl. So I just feel, again, I'm a defensive guy. I love defenses. Armstrong, this league has passing. Brad, this league has all that other stuff, but it was built on the purple people eaters, the doomsday defense, the steel curtain, all the orange crush, right? All these defensive still wins championships. And actually, I love the fact that defense made that quarterback and made that offense look anemic. I love it. I love that it was so dominant, because defenses, they always have the pass interference, right? They want offense, and to see the defense be like, we are not denied and we are going to make it part of this game, that I loved. I loved.
You know what was interesting, Brad, is that, for the first quarter and a half, it was a defensive game. Nobody was really scoring. Seattle was scoring their 3 points. They couldn't get in the end zone. And then after halftime, you just knew it was coming, that somebody was going to commit a turnover. You could just feel it. You knew it was, and you knew once they committed that turnover, that would change the game. And lo and behold, May committed the cardinal sin. And once that happened, and the way they scored that touchdown, he was just wide open. I could have caught the ball. And I could have caught the ball.
I love Armstrong. I love your passion. I really do.
I could have. But and listen, they didn't just give them one gift that turned into 7 points. They gave them another gift that turned into 3 points. And Brad, it was over.
Yeah, it was just like Lou said. I think defense wins championships is something that I always fall back to too. And in the NFL, you saw it with the Broncos, the Peyton Manning year. I mean, they had no offense and they won. They were the best team in the NFL simply with that defense. And yesterday, I mean, they really gave the Legion of Boom like a run for their money. I mean, what you saw last night was a performance for the ages defensively.
But I will say this though. I think my man Lou is really onto something in his assessment, and that is, if you really watched New England in the playoffs, who they were playing, there were just so many turnovers. It was so messy, whether it was Houston.
Yeah.
And you know what? They could survive all those turnovers against Houston. They could survive the turnovers against Denver. But when you have a real, because let me tell you something, Seattle's offense is much better than Houston's and Denver's, but you cannot survive those turnovers playing Seattle. Because guess what? Seattle did not commit one turnover last night, and they did not have a penalty call against them until the third quarter. It tells you how clean their game was last night.
Yeah. No, it was a masterpiece. It was just domination in Seattle. That was one of the better performances I have seen by an overall defense. But again, going back to if I could, Armstrong, going back to the halftime show, because your comment and other people's comment and what has transformed over the last 24 hours is very, very interesting, because the big thing out there was, I didn't understand the language and things of that nature. For me, I didn't really have to understand the language to know that there was a vibe and something going on. And so there was many performances over the last couple, few years in the Super Bowl. Shakira, Rihanna, The Who, the Rolling Stones, all those, and none of those people were U.S. citizens, right? With Puerto Rico being a territory and Puerto Rico being part of the United States, I mean, this is what America is, right? And so we don't have to always like it, but we can agree to disagree that, okay, we don't really like or couldn't understand something that was happening in the show. But at the end of the day, the expression of, and there's a reason, Armstrong, you've been to the game. This is the first one you've missed in a while. You've been to the games. You know what Roger Goodell is trying to do and build that game globally, right? There were people that were probably flying back to Mexico and back to all these things. I mean, he is trying to grow that game. Bad Bunny there was no mistake. That was a strategic move by the NFL to build that game globally.
I'm so glad you said that, because it is so important. And you know what? You can have your opinion. I can have mine. But at the end of the day, he's trying to grow the brand. Brad, I'm going to end it with you on this note. My guy, Dan Newland, who was a former ambassador during Trump's first term, he placed a $400,000 bet and won $1 million, and he took that money and donated it to a children's hospital in his community. Wow, I know we're out of time. How did he place that bet? $400,000?
Yeah, it was a great story. He made an agreement with the Hard Rock bet company in Miami, and it was all for a good cause. And he said he was going to donate regardless of the outcome, but he walked away with $1 million, and it's to a great cause.
Boy, let me tell you, some people just have all the luck. That's just right. Listen.
Maybe it's like you.
like you.
But look, I must admit, I enjoyed this conversation. Now I got to get on to some other stuff. But Lou, Brad, thank you both so much for joining us. And let us all congratulate both teams for making it to the big dance. Seattle and New England, because that is no easy feat. To me and Bugs Bunny, we want to congratulate the halftime. Where is it? Oh, I'm sorry, it's Bad Bunny. I'm thinking about Bugs Bunny. Let me get out of here, okay? Okay, guys, thank you for joining us. We'll be back. Don't go away. It is Bad Bunny. It's not. Two of my favorite intelligent officers are joining us now. Ryan McBeth, Analyst, Software Architect, and Mr. Operative with the CIA, but we never show his face or tell you about his whereabouts. But he is retired Senior Service Case Officer from the CIA. You know, Iran is telling us, Mr. Operative, that they're the drumbeats of war. I have friends of mine in Israel who have seen American fighter jets fly over their airspace. The State Department has asked Americans to evacuate from Iran. Vice President J.D. Vance is on his way to the Middle East to see if they can negotiate a nuclear deal to stop this escalation of conflict. Mr. Operative, put this in perspective for us.
Armstrong, there's an awful lot of noise and commotion out there, but there's very little movement that I've seen. The neighborhood is not the least bit worried. People that live next door to Iran in Iraq, the Gulf states, I mean, Iran is in a very difficult position, and talking about, you know, their willingness to go to war and negotiate their nuclear program. What is left of the nuclear program to negotiate? And where are they right now? When you look at the situation on the ground, you still see enormous killings are going on from people that were brought in by the regime to slaughter their own citizens to try and quell a disturbance, but it doesn't seem to have borne fruit. It's still going on in multiple cities. And there's a lot of talk about the Ayatollah trying to arrange his exit from the country. This is not the situation that the Iranians are in a position to bluff or to try and attract attention to themselves like they're a major force in the region. They're a declining force. No one knows exactly how bad they're declining, but they're certainly not on the offense, and they're off balance. And they're saying things that don't track with what you see on the news that's getting out of there. And there is a lot of information getting out of Iran, despite Iran's robust efforts to turn off the bleed of information from the country. It's just not possible to shut it off.
Right, here's what I don't understand. Okay, take a walk with me. What is our purpose in this escalation? Is it to save the people from tyranny? Is it to stop Iran's nuclear programming? Is it to overthrow the government? Because listen, Russia is doing worse with Iran. I mean, worse. I mean, as they talk about negotiations, they're dropping drones, they're killing people. Over 1 million people have died. You talk about devastation. Look at why do we have, and they have nuclear capability, just like Iran. We have one standard for Iran and another standard for Russia. Help us understand the contradiction, the hypocrisy, whatever you want to call it.
So when you look at a country like Russia, they are treated differently because they do have nuclear weapons. Well, it's questionable how many of them actually still work. The fact is that even one could be a big problem and set the American economy back a lot. But if you take a look at Iran, if I were talking with the president right now, I would advise him to come up with some sort of message. We don't really have a message on Iran right now. And if you were to say to me, what is our mission in Iran? I don't know whether it is to get some sort of nuclear deal. I don't know whether it is to kneecap Iran so they can't use their proxy militia forces, the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas. Well, Hamas has been attrited to almost to nothing. They can't use them to disturb shipping in the Red Sea. I don't know what our actual mission is in Iran. Is it regime change? If it's regime change, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we do that. But that's an excellent question. And if we don't really know what we're supposed to do, it's going to be extremely difficult to know what the end state is. And that is the big question mark. What is the end state when it comes to Iran?
And then, Mr. Operative, and then there's a different kind of silent war that has gone on, where no shots have been fired, no one has really died, and it started with the CCP and the balloons over our Montana and other airspace, and we were afraid to shoot them down. It started when at the University of Michigan, where those labs were discovered, and the person was just found guilty and have gone to jail. We discovered it when they discovered that lab in Fresno, California 3 years ago, and then they realized there was another laboratory growing right across the waters in Las Vegas, Nevada, and yet they did nothing for 3 years. And all of a sudden, they find all these bioweapons, bioterrorist weapons that they're manufacturing, and then there's this rumor that they're also doing the same elsewhere. And then you have these Governor Hochul, her top person was being paid $3 million a year by the Chinese government spying on the governor of New York. And if they're spying on the governor of New York, you know they're embedded in other political places in Congress, all throughout this country. And if you know if they're in Congress, they're in academia. And if they're in academia, you know they're in corporate America. They're filtrated everywhere. You got to ask yourself, these are things that are warning signs that the Chinese are deciding to take out Americans and to do damage to us, not through military might, but they have all these young men who disappeared. They don't take advantage of the government largesse. Some of them are used to put on the protest street. When Jing came over to San Francisco a couple of years ago, they were put out the protest. Everybody knows they were housed by the embassy in California and China. Everybody knew this, and they knew they were fed and taken care of, and they knew exactly what they wanted to do. Practice this disruption to embarrass Jing on his visit, but yet no one talks about it, and it keeps escalating and escalating. That is the big, I'm more concerned about Chinese on American soil than I am about Iran right now, and Russia and Ukraine, Mr. Operative.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Armstrong, and one of the things that my takeaways from the list that you just walked through is I think it's time the president addressed the nation and explain what is going on in a lot of these issues. We have a tremendous amount of activity inside the country and outside the country, but if my memory serves me correctly, the president never made a speech in his first term from the Oval Office, and that's a thing that is a very powerful platform. If you want to communicate directly to the United States population, that's the way to do it. And it would seem to me it's about time that we hear from the guy on what is the national security direction, and what are we trying to achieve with all this noise going on in the world. You've got a lot of troops moved around. You've got a lot of naval forces moved around. They seem to be camped out in certain theaters where they're just there, ready. But why? What is the objective? And I don't hear from him. I don't know why he doesn't use that platform. He can call the network and get on TV for 30 minutes or 60 minutes. They have to give it to him if he's going to communicate with the country.
Yeah, but the other thing though, Ryan, here's the thing that really Americans really should think about deeply. If the CCP are able to penetrate our infrastructure so deeply, why is it no one says anything? You know why? Because somebody's being bought to turn and look the other way. They have so much money they've spent. They're corrupted Americans where they don't realize they're taking money at the detriment of the unraveling of their own nation. And everybody's getting paid, but they don't understand the consequences when you put all these threads together of what may happen someday on American soil. It's not the people that they're deporting that I'm concerned about. Yeah, I'm concerned about the gang, but it's the Chinese no one talks about. And they keep escalating and escalating on American soil inside our perimeter.
You're absolutely correct. There's at least 39,000 Chinese that came into the United States since 2023. It was through one little hole in the border fence that was never secured. In fact, there were Chinese apps telling people to go to this specific hole. As I believe that we need to know who is in this country, and if you are an illegal immigrant, then we need to figure out why you're here and take care of that. But I'm less worried about the guy hanging out at Home Depot and more worried about the Chinese dude that we don't know about. that those people scare the heck out of me because they're the military age males that are going to organize. And when we have the combination of the Chinese three warfare strategy, where they use legal warfare, media warfare, and information warfare in order to in order to accomplish their objectives, we're also going to see things like sabotage. Right? We're going to see these Chinese nationals execute sabotage against the United States when China invades Taiwan, most likely next year or the year after. So I don't know.
But I actually think all this is going to coincide with their invasion of Taiwan.
Oh, absolutely.
That weaken us. Once America decides to join, they already have everybody in place, whether it's detonate, whatever they're planning to do, they're organized, and they're very quiet.
Yeah, well, it's hard, right? It's hard to go after a Chinese person that came into the country. You don't know where they are, but
the Chinese knows where they are.
The Chinese know where they are.
They know where they are.
It's a lot easier to pull up a convoy outside of Home Depot and grab a bunch of guys who are standing outside waiting for work. It's harder to go after the Chinese, but one of these things has a larger payoff. Granted, one group broke the law. Actually, both groups broke the law. But one I'm far more concerned about. And why we're not pursuing that, I don't have an answer for you.
What is the answer, Mr. Operative, before we take a break here?
That's the crux of the whole discussion right there, what Ryan just mentioned. These are trained soldiers, fighting age male soldiers that are in the country. And why aren't we looking for them? Why isn't there an address from the nation's capital on this counterintelligence issue to locate these people? Where are they? Because we will hear from them at some point, but I don't see any efforts to do anything about it. I just don't. I mean, maybe I'm just not in the right place to see it, but you would think that we would be looking for these people because they wrote a book about how to employ this exact technique. The Unrestricted Warfare book that came out in 1999 for the millennium wasn't even focused on by the U.S. Counterintelligence Committee for several years. It's a how-to book written by two Special Forces lieutenant colonels at their own war college to describe how to break America. It's an unconventional warfare manual. If we wrote it, it would be called a TM with a number on it.
Well, there's one thing we can all agree on, is that they are here. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, where are they? That may be a different issue, but they're here. And all these other distractions that are going on, to me, that is the biggest threat to the American way of life. We'll be back.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence. There's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion, and that is there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues, because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com. So, Mr. Operative, walk us through how these large-scale protests like Minneapolis typically get organized, and what signals tell us whether the protest is organic, whether it's coordinated, whether it's performative, or whether it's based on a larger purpose, there's a greater purpose to it, and what role do these NGOs and the activists networks
are external factors playing all this?
Armstrong, that's a great question, because this is a well-organized covert action program that is activated inside the United States to disrupt and attract attention, force the ICE people into defensive posture, and to try and trigger some type of a violent response that causes serious injury or death. It's all part of an orchestrated strategy. There's a payroll system, there's a travel support section, there's money being passed out in cash. If you dissect some of these cities, I don't understand why there's no counterintelligence effort being mounted against them to disrupt this before it even starts, because they have to coordinate with each other. They're talking to each other. Somebody's passing out the money. Somebody's supporting those that get arrested. Those people post bail, lawyers appear. It's a well-orchestrated covert program that is running inside the United States. And I don't see anything to indicate that the federal executive is involved in anything to disrupt any of this stuff. The ICE agents are being sent around with court-ordered arrest and detain and expulsion orders that are signed by a federal judge. Yet there's a concerted effort to thwart their actions, and I don't see anything going on that's going to disrupt that or prevent any of this stuff from happening before it starts. Why is that? These people from ICE are exposed to extreme danger. These whole standoffs with automobiles, a 5,000-pound car rides over you, you're probably going to die, or you're going to be permanently disabled by going underneath of a car and getting twisted and crushed. And for them to use deadly force, they're in a situation while deadly force is authorized if you believe that your life is in immediate peril, or a colleague's life, or an innocent bystander for that matter. But the media is siding with the people that are doing the protest, and it's created a very difficult scenario for the federal agents to deal with. But why isn't there preemptive action? I don't have an answer for that.
So Ryan, how quickly can online narratives turn into real world action, and what intelligence indicators do professionals watch during this protest escalation? And really, how much of today's protest do you think activity is shaped online versus really on the ground?
I would say close to 100% is shaped online, or at least using electronic devices. Currently in Minneapolis, you have people using signal groups. And what's fascinating is that I called it a nascent insurgency, and some people got mad at me when I said it was a nascent insurgency, but looking at Minneapolis today reminds me of Iraq in June of 2003. So basically, what they are coordinating online. In Iraq, they would coordinate inside of mosques, but you coordinate online. You find a signal group, which is a large chat group, and from there you have a group captain. That person divvies out assignments. So you're going to go over here. You're going to go over here. You're going to go over here. And they have different roles. Like, for example, there are typically 3 people in a cell. One person is a video recorder. One person is, I don't say an announcer, where they shout rights at a person being arrested. If the ICE is arresting a migrant, they'll shout at them what their rights are and don't sign anything. And then you have a third person who is sort of the monitor. And this monitor makes sure everyone else is safe. So if you're video recording something with a phone, you might kind of get tunnel vision on what you're doing, and so this monitor is there to make sure that the person recording isn't walking out into traffic or about to get himself arrested or gets too close. So when you have something like that, when you have clearly defined roles, and then you have command and signal, where you have everyone has a whistle, and 3 short blasts on the whistle means that ICE is over here, and 3 long blasts means they're actively arresting somebody. Well, that lets everyone know, all right, this is where you have to go in order to stay loud, right, and cover these events. So hopefully I answered your question. I kind of went off onto how this happens, but a lot of it is organized online. And from there, you have people setting up schedules of who is going to cover what and where.
So, Mr. Operative, I got to switch reels for a minute. The Nancy Guthrie kidnapping has consumed this country, from the President of the United States. But I don't know what it is that just doesn't feel right about this story. And I find myself thinking about it, reading, and you're an intelligence guy, and I know you know about this story. What are your instincts telling you?
I am horrified by what I've seen so far, Armstrong. The way this has been rolled out, how long she was unaccounted for on the first day, plenty of time to go from Tucson, or the Tucson suburbs where she lives, and simply cross the border into Mexico. It's the Wild West on the other side of the U.S. border in that part of Arizona. So you cross the border, you're completely safe. There's a question that came up right in the beginning, that she has a cell phone connection to her pacemaker. A pacemaker is a signal emission device. It sends out a signal. If there's a radio wave coming from that device to whatever the monitoring system is that's set up inside her house, then that's a signal that you can see. Now, I know the police departments don't have that kind of technology. The Bureau can get it, but the military and the CIA has those kinds of tools. And if you have an emitting signal, are we looking for her in Mexico? I haven't heard anybody talk about crossing the border. And the fact that there's supposedly no trace of a person, now maybe you can disconnect from the phone system in the house, but you can't turn the pacemaker off. That's something that the doctor can do, or take it out. But has that happened? And who knows? And it was so sad to watch Miss Guthrie on television today. I'm sure she has reached the end of her rope along with her family, on no information and no help, and you feel helpless in a situation like that. And her pleading for her mother's life. It's just horrifying that this is going on in the United States, and it's rolling out without any real answers coming. Nothing is being done. And is she out of the country? I have seen no one raise the question or address that question. I don't get it.
What about the ransom, the Bitcoin? Well, they caught the culprit for the Bitcoin. He saw everything online, and he decided to use that to try to fleece them, extort money for them. He was arrested. And then she's gone today, almost an hour ago, from talking about law enforcement to pleading to the public, you know something. And then there was something that came out today that said earlier they were not sure that they could call this a kidnapping.
Yeah, those are the mixed signals I'm talking about. It's the same thing. It's like, what in the world is going on with this case? I don't get it. I just don't understand. Here we are, days after it supposedly occurred, and there's still not any kind of definitive explanation or coherent explanation on what anybody's doing to find the lady.
What about the blood that they found? Does that concern you?
No, because there's no context given on where it was and how it was. And I've heard all kinds of crazy commentary on how somebody could knock the Ring camera off the front of the house and cut themselves on it. It's just speculation, and there's so much noise that there's very little fact or very little information that you can put together into a coherent story that I've seen. I can't imagine the horror that the family is going through, watching this show roll out between the police, the feds, and their missing mom. It's just a horrifying story.
Do you think she's alive?
I don't know, and I would never say. You just don't know. But I know there should be a hell of a lot more going on to find that pacemaker. And if you have to violate the sovereignty of Mexico to go look, that is just too bad for Mexico. You're looking for a missing American woman who's in her 80s with a pacemaker. And this is the time to thunder around and step on toes and make something happen. They need something to happen. Make something happen.
Could she have just won it off?
I don't think so.
You don't?
I think, an elderly woman that wandered off, somebody would have seen her, or she'd have stumbled through somebody's camera system in their house, because I know exactly where she lives. That Catalina area is a nice area. It's a gated community. And it's 40 miles or so away to the border of Mexico. That's not that far. And you're going through a remote area south of Tucson. Tucson's a pretty crowded place. There's a lot going on there. It's a nice city, but once you leave town and you're headed south, it's no man's land. Then the checkpoint system is around 40 clicks from the border, and then you go into sort of the dead zone until you get to the border. And there's all kinds of paths and way across the border. It's not a defended area. I'm sure there's some wall there, but there's also tunnels there. And you can just walk in and out of Mexico. It happens every night. Every 24 hours there's people coming back and forth. It's just a remote part of the United States. But I just don't understand why there's not more information. If you've got all these people working on it, they should have been able to dissect this. And who's in charge there? I couldn't tell you.
Before I say goodbye to Mr. Operative and to Ryan, your final thoughts, Ryan?
Boy, that's a really good one. Finding a pacemaker, I mean, I do know a little bit about signals intelligence. Finding a pacemaker might be a little tough since it's not going to be able to transmit very far. So even if you're interrogating it, you might have to be fairly close. So that could certainly be something that you could engage in the last mile. If you narrow something down to a target house, you might be able to bring in some equipment and say, all right, let's interrogate the pacemaker. Oh, we found a pacemaker here. Let's get the serial number off it. Yep, this is the right serial number. All right, let's hit this house. I would say, and I would actually be willing to speculate from a person who has zero law enforcement background, this person is most likely deceased. I don't see how you can put an 80-year-old woman through such trauma without a substandard outcome arising from this capture. I mean, if this was a 19-year-old, it would be a different story. So this person is most likely deceased.
Well, I pray that's not the circumstance. Let me thank you both for joining us. When we come back, Dr. Sina McCullough will join us on Making America Healthy Again. I'm Armstrong Williams. Your voice, your future. We'll be back. Thank you.
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
Dr. McCullough, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and welcome to the broadcast. Why do you feel the FDA's gluten-free definition is outdated, and what is gluten actually made of scientifically?
Great. Well, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to talk about this topic with you because the gluten-free label actually almost caused me to die from an autoimmune condition. So to get into the specifics of that, let me start with the label is about 80 years outdated. It's the reason why we have gluten labeled from the FDA as foods that are wheat, barley, and rye is because back in 1944, during the Winter of Starvation, there was a Dutch pediatrician named William Dickey, and he was working with children in a hospitalization setting. They were very sick children. They had celiac disease. And basically, during this Winter of Starvation, they didn't have any wheat coming in to feed these children, which was the staple food at the time. Well, what Dickey noticed was the patients were recovering. These children with celiac disease were healing themselves. And because the staples at the time in that country were wheat, barley, and rye, That's the definition that came about for gluten. The only wheat, barley, and rye had gluten. That is the definition that the FDA adopted, and to this day still adopts, that only gluten is in wheat, barley, and rye. But that is simply outdated. We know that now gluten is actually not one protein, it's a protein complex. So it's really glutens. There's a prolamine protein fraction and a glutenin protein fraction. The FDA only regulates the prolamine fraction in wheat, which is gliadin. But now we know that every grain contains its own version of these gluten-like proteins, including corn and rice. So here's the irony with this gluten-free label, is that corn contains zyme and rice contains oryzin. These are the prolamines, the gluten subfraction in those two grains. Well, what are most certified gluten-free foods made of? Corn and rice. So despite this, the FDA doesn't acknowledge that gluten does exist in all grains. And that means that manufacturers who are making these certified gluten-free foods can slap that label on them, even though they contain corn and or rice that is making some people sick.
But is that why so many people fail to heal on a traditional gluten-free diet?
Yes, this is what we think now is one of the main reasons, because as you said there was a 2009 study that came out showing that about 92% of people who went on a traditional gluten-free diet for 16 months, they actually failed to heal their gut lining. And about 26%, I believe, actually got worse on a traditional gluten-free diet. We see the same thing with something called gluten-free whiplash. So that's when people think, okay, maybe I have a problem with gluten, so I'm going to avoid wheat, barley, and rye. Basically, I'm going to rely on these gluten-free foods containing the corn and the rice. And what happens is they start to feel better. So they think maybe it's the gluten, but then they have a whiplash effect where they feel worse. And so then they think, oh, well, maybe it's not gluten because I'm on a quote unquote gluten-free diet. And so this is one of the big traps that people get themselves into when they're trying to reverse chronic or autoimmune conditions, is through no fault of their own. They don't realize that label is just outdated.
So is there anything that's really gluten-free?
So grain-free is gluten-free. So that's why I tell my clients that if you really want true gluten avoidance, you must be grain-free.
Interesting.
So predominantly you want to rely on whole foods, but if you are going to eat the processed foods, go for the grain-free options.
Should consumers rethink grain-based gluten-free foods?
What was that again?
Should consumers rethink these gluten-based, gluten-free foods altogether?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. So the number one way to heal yourself through food is to rely on whole foods, preferably organic whole foods or regeneratively grown whole foods. If you're going to consume processed foods, in my opinion, if you're trying to avoid gluten, avoid those foods, those gluten certified foods. You must read the food label. And if there's any ingredient on it that comes from any grain or any grain derivative, because that's another topic it's hard to identify grain derived foods. Even vitamin C, for example, can predominantly come from corn, even in supplements. So it is ubiquitous in our food supply. And many of us are told, if you want to avoid gluten, just go to these gluten-free certified foods. And that's actually the wrong advice.
So who's benefiting from this mislabeling?
Who's benefiting from it?
Yes.
The companies. So, and I don't want to demonize the companies because the companies aren't doing anything that is legally wrong, right? They are following the FDA's guidelines. But this business of gluten-free, I mean, it's $1 billion it's $1 billion business. And so the companies are benefiting from it. And I think that a lot of this, though, is lack of awareness. People aren't aware that corn and rice can actually trigger an inflammatory response that is equally as inflammatory as wheat. And what's shocking to me is if you look in the scientific literature, we've known this since at least 1979. Like, it is not a new fact that corn and rice contain gluten and that they can trigger illness like chronic and autoimmune conditions. As I said, we've known this since 1979. We have a study back then that showed that people with Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, and celiac disease, they all had elevated antibodies when they consumed corn. And get this, the corn that they consumed in that study was Kellogg's Corn Flakes,
Oh my
which
goodness.
is marked as a safe gluten-free breakfast food. So we already know that back since 1979, corn can stimulate antibody production and that it caused leaky gut. And then we have more recent studies from 2013, 2015, for example, that demonstrate that corn itself can elicit a cellular immune response in some people. So what that means is it can actually stimulate the release of a cytokine called interferon gamma, which causes leaky gut.
So let me mention this to
those
you before, in the minute that we have left here. We gotta have you back. How does the immune system confuse these different grain proteins?
That's a great question. So it's actually molecular mimicry in some cases. So for example, both corn and rice their gluten subfraction looks structurally similar to wheat. And so sometimes the immune system can get confused between them, and it mounts the same magnitude of an inflammatory response to those gluten subfractions in those individuals. It's not everybody, but it is large enough to be concerned. We think that at least 50% of the people who are sensitive to wheat are also sensitive to corn and rice. So it's not a small percentage of people that we're talking about here. It's a large enough percentage that scientists have come forward in different research studies and have actually said that we need to reevaluate the use.
You know, you hear that music? I'm out of time, but we've got to have you back. I got to thank you. We got to have you back. I got to thank everybody for joining us. It's a great conversation. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.